Hey, welcome back to my channel where I'm building a RANS S21 plane. This is a pretty exciting episode. This is the first start of my Titan IO 340 180 horse engine, and about half the video is going to cover the preparation to do that, and the other half is the procedure we use to start it. We do have some hiccups, but I'll let the video address that directly. And with that, let's watch the engine start. I'm going to prep the engine for its first start. After I get the engine started, then I'll feel comfortable riveting the boot cowl and closing that up. And then I think it's off to the airport for wings. So what I've started to do research, there's really two steps or two systems. You got to get the oil set, and then you got to get the gas set. So with the oil, the first thing you do is drain the pickling oil. And my understanding of the instruction on that is you get the drain going, you take the four bottom spark plugs out, and then I'm actually going to rotate the pistons or rotate the cylinders so that any leftover pickling oil will come out the plugs. Then I'll cap that up back up, and I'll put 6 quarts of the Aero 100 mineral oil in, which is your break-in oil. And then I'll test for oil pressure, which will be the next step, and then we move on to the gas system. My next step is to get gas into the plane, and more precisely into the header tank. I found my 90-degree gas tank hardware, and then I had some 3/8 vinyl hose that the hardware fits in pretty well, so I'll clamp these in. And my plan is to cut 2 sections of hose coming off the header tank, and then I'll feed gas down into the hose, probably about 4 gallons into the header tank, check to make sure I don't have any leaks, and then get the gas forward through the gasculator and then into the plane. So that's the strategy. Here's my setup for getting gas into the header tank. I've got 2 hoses attached. This one over here is just a short hose. This will act as my breather valve, and it's above the level of the top of the tank. This hose runs up, and I've got it attached to the frame with a little funnel at the top. My plan is to get enough fuel in to come above the low fuel fitting to test this fitting. I'm not going to get the fuel high enough to test these fittings right now, because these tubes are not going to stand permanently, and I don't want to have gas in here and not have something on these fittings. So I'm not going to test these fittings right now. So my thought is to get the level right about here, which will give me enough to test the engine, but not enough that I have to leave these on in the current configuration. So let's see how this works. I've got about 3.5 gallons in the header tank. It's a 5-gallon tank. I was hoping to get it all the way up over the low fuel valve, but that's not leaking. It is about halfway up over the cap. That's not leaking. So right now, I've got enough fuel in there to run my test. I'm going to cut this line and just kind of cap these ends just so that there's enough for airflow. And then we'll move on with the engine test. My next step, from what I understand, is to get fuel up to the gasculator and up to the engine. It is not a self-priming fuel pump, which is what I learned, I think, from Derek's video. So if you have the tail down, you're not going to get fuel to go forward. So I've elevated the tail so that the tank is definitely higher than the fuel pump. And I'm assuming this will prime, and I'm going to turn the fuel pump on. And then I'm going to release this valve, and hopefully I should get fuel flow. I've got a can inside of a can here, so we'll see if we can get some fuel flow through the system. Okay, I've got my panel on, which is just with the Avionics Master. Oh, fuel valve. Don't forget the fuel valve. I gotta turn my fuel valve on. Fuel valve is on. Let's bring this little guy up. It's got a lock on it. So that's up with a lock on. Okay. Now let's turn the fuel pump on and see if we get some fuel coming through. There we go. We got good fuel flow. Perfect. Perfect, perfect. I'm going to turn the valve off. I'm going to shut this guy off. I'm going to turn the valve on again. And this should give me fuel into the engine. I can hear that the fuel pump has got some back pressure to it. Okay. Okay, I think the next step is to get the prop hub, flywheel and everything, get that all installed and pitch the prop. I've got a tail dragger, 80-inch Whirlwind, and the Whirlwind hub, which is a whole other story. But I understand the best pitch that people are using is 17 degrees. Not critical for the engine start, so it may get adjusted before first flight, but I'll get it all put on at a 17-degree pitch. Okay, and getting the prop extension on, which has to be put on before we put the hub and the prop on. These 7/16 bolts in here with a 5/8 head size, they need to be torqued to 40 foot-pounds, but it needs to be done in increments of 20, 30, and then 40, and each time you do it in a star pattern. So we'll get that done. Also, there's a lot of wire tying that needs to get done. These bolts, the prop extension bolts need to be wire tied, and the alternator bolts need to be wire tied. I haven't tightened the alternator yet. I've got it on around, but it's got to be tightened. The bolts need to be tightened, and then those need to be wire tied as well. So we'll get all that done before we get the hub and the prop on. Okay, so this is the big day. Hopefully we're going to get the engine started today. I'm going through my checklist here. I've got bolts all torqued correctly, 30 pounds for most of the smaller ones. Oil change, I've got the pickling oil out, and I've got the Aero 100 mineral oil in. Phasing of the spark plugs, I did the phasing with the ignition. That's where you are turning the prop in top dead center, getting spark on each of the plugs. I've got the phasing done, but that's in a prior video if you want to watch that. Break-in oil, that's done. Spark plugs in. I've got gas in the tank, you saw that. I've got it coming out up to the engine through the gasculator. Fuel pump works. Then it says to crank the engine with the ignition off and get the oil pressure up. It said it could take several 5-second bursts of cranking to get the oil pressure up. We'll do that when we're about to start. Spark plugs are torqued, 20 for the plugs, 30 for the plug adapters. Fuel pump on to get fuel pressure. We got that done. And then it says in the starting process, unlike when I start the Cessnas that I fly, with the fuel injected, you do not prime it at all, and you don't start it with mixture in. Apparently, you get mixture in, set the throttle to 1/8, pull your mixture out, turn it over. As soon as you start getting firing, you add your mixture after you. So that's a new process of starting, but I'll follow that one. What else? And then don't run it for more than 5 minutes. Look for oil leaks, shut down, run it at low idle, 800 to 900 RPMs. They're saying don't rev it, don't have it near cutoff. I'll check my idle setting by pulling it back to see where I am, because it may have to get adjusted. But run it to 700 to 800 at 1 to 2 minutes to splash oil around, and that should be it. So that's the process. We're going to roll it out. I'm going to put the nose out into the driveway. I'm going to leave the tail in the garage. I got my truck kind of blocking the driveway. I've got 2 friends coming over. Their trucks are going to block the driveway as well. And I'll have the parking brake set. I'll have it chalked with 2 4x6 pieces of wood, and I'll be in it with the tow brakes ready and ready to kill it in case there's anything happened. We'll have some fire extinguishers around in case something goes wrong. I think that's it. I think we're ready to go. Okay, we decided to move the plane out of the driveway. We had the nose facing out, but we were kind of concerned that we would blow all the loose stuff away. I've got my friend Rich and Anton with the assistants here. So we're going to start it out here. We're going to use that tree as our tie down. First thing is we've got the plugs out. We're going to crank it until we get some oil pressure, put the plugs in, and then fire it up. Okay. Okay, the next step is we're going to crank this thing over and see if we can get some oil pressure. So master on. Probably should have done this before I started the video. So that's what splicing is good for. We'll cut this out. Okay, so ignition breakers are out. Fuel valve is off.
Spark plug wires are
Spark plug wires are off, so I've got my spark plugs out on the bottom row. So I'm watching my fuel pressure, or my oil pressure. Okay, clear prop.
Okay, you got the plugs completely out. Okay.
The screen goes off. Let's see.
Should hear a change in the pitch of it spinning when you get pressure.
Okay, the screen, when you turn it over, it seems the screen goes off. That's interesting. Okay, screen's back. It doesn't show any oil pressure.
You can hear the change in pitch.
That's the pressure? Okay.
Or the battery's back.
It's a fresh battery. It's we're still 12.1, so we're 17. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We got oil pressure. Okay, so off. Circuits are still out. Fuel is still off. Okay, so let's get the plugs back in.
Yes.
Okay, here we go for first start. Brake is set. Ignition breakers are in. Gas is on. Master is on. We're full rich. We're going to go quarter on the prop. Mixture out. Everything's ready. We don't brake, but the brakes are set. Clear prop. Okay, ignition in, breakers are in,
Fuel on.
gas is on, fuel on, master's on, throttle to a quarter, mixture's off. I think we're good. Ready? Clear prop.
Smells good. Come on, baby.
Were you all the way out on your idle?
Yeah, idle's all the way back.
Okay, so your stop
Okay.
is a bit high.
So I think we need an idle adjustment.
A little high. Take 3.
Okay, ready for take 3? Here we go. Okay, ignition in, gas on,
Brakes.
master on, mixture's rich, throttle in a quarter, mixture's out,
Brakes.
rear prop. $26.60.
So it didn't move much.
Didn't move much. Mixture's rich. Open a little. I'm going to go open half. Mixture's lean. Clear prop. Woohoo! We got engine start. Had a little bit of problem with the idle and some of the idle setting, but that's all to be worked out. But other than that, engine start sounds great. I'm thrilled. This is fantastic. Okay, well, that was an interesting day. First of all, that section or that episode took 10.4 hours. That brings my build time to 1,445.1 hours. And that's not research time, that's hands-on build time. I'm still a little concerned about the RPMs. When we shut down that last run, the RPM indicator was reading 1,500, which is obviously high. And if I pulled the throttle back any further, I'd shut it off. My concern is it didn't really sound like 1,500 RPMs. It did feel more like an idle RPM setting. So I'm going to follow up the G3. I understand has some settings in there about engine size, cylinders, and how many pulses in the RPM sensing. So I'm going to check that out. I also possibly might be the light speed ignition. If you remember, the light speed ignition also has the sensors that read the RPMs from the flywheel. So I'm going to see if there's something going on there, or it just might be a fuel servo setting. It could be a little bit of anything, but I'm ready to get the wings on. I'm ready to get the plane to a hangar and get the next phase going. So I'll do all that research out at the hangar when I get the next part of the build going. And thanks a lot for watching. And remember, dream it, just build it.